It's banlist season, boys. So let's jump straight into Edo Pro to take a look at what's probably getting hit. Starting off with the forbidden list, I think there'll be two additions, namely Eradicator Epidemic Virus and Dimension Shifter. Both of these cards kind of prevent your opponent from playing the game, and I don't think they're necessarily healthy. If we look at Eradicate Epidemic Virus, right, it's something that's super searchable in Labyrinth, and if we look at sort of what decks are sort of moving towards, they're very spell heavy. So if you kind of have resolving this card just means that you win on the spot, and I don't think that's, a fun place to be for the game. It doesn't help in terms of sales anyway, so I think it's a nice indirect hit to Labyrinth while getting rid of one of the problem cards. Same thing with Dimension Shifter. This is one of those cards that is either played at 0 or 3, and it's something that you kind of want to see in your opening hand, and if you do, you generally win on the spot, right? It's something that a lot of decks have been abusing. In the past it was just something like Exorcister and Fluanderiz who could play this, but now we have things like Kashtira and some other rogue decks that are playing this, and it's just not a fun place to be. And I think this is something that I think the community will agree with me when I say that it needs to go to 0. In the side deck, I've kind of put two things which I feel could get banned, but probably won't because the Megasins sort of give them plot armor. So, Arizard. I don't think this card is very unfair. I kind of like it as a boss monster, but my argument kind of is that you can't really have this on the list. I mean, you can't have this off the list while Colossus is. It doesn't seem fair. To me, this is like way better than Colossus, and yeah, it just doesn't make sense that people have to play this while they can't play Colossus. Same thing with Runic Fountain, or rather not the same thing, but same thing in the sense that I don't think it's going to get hit. But it is something that people have been abusing lately. Like we see this being splashed into so many decks, which I kind of like to a degree because it kind of gives decks like Plunder Patrol and For Higher Life. But at the same time, being able to draw 3 cards during both players' turns is kind of ridiculous, right? And I don't think it's healthy for the game. I mean, it's something that should go. But I think realistically, we'll only see that at the start of the next season. Moving on to the limited list, there's quite a lot that I've decided to put on. I think it's been a while, or rather it feels like it's been a while since we've gotten a big list, so I kind of decided to put the stuff that I feel as though is the most relevant. Starting off with Lady Labyrinth. So some people might not agree with me on this. They kind of feel as though, well, I guess in general, you can consider Labyrinth to be a deck that's kind of hit or miss. But the thing is that the deck just feels so oppressive when he gets to go off, right? And we've kind of seen in the Master Duel Dark vs. Light event that the event kind of had a lot of success by putting Labyrinth 1. It kind of made the deck feel a bit more balanced. And I feel as though this would be a nice way to sort of bring this deck back down to earth. So I think Lady Labyrinth could realistically go to 1. I think it would be great for the game if it did. And it doesn't hurt the deck so much that it's unplayable. Plus, they're getting new support soon, so there needs to be some kind of incentive for players to want to put the funds aside to invest in that. So I think this could be a nice hit, Konami side. Magnamoods, realistically I'm not too sure how he hit, but still we'll get with the Megasins coming up. But I think putting Magnamood to 1 is a nice sweet spot, right? People will still buy the Bastilles from the Megatons, but it will be somewhat grounded in a sense. We kind of see them being played in a lot of things like Dragon Link, branded. So this is one of the ways that we can kind of hurt the consistency of this engine a bit by limiting their searcher. I think it's something that's quite necessary. It's also me flexing as a math player. So yeah, I don't like Bastille. They banished my Sigma. But yeah, I think realistically this could go to 1. But I don't see any of the other Bastilles getting hit. Harpora will likely come off the list. I think Orcus are at a position where they kind of need as much support as they can get. I know a lot of the community kind of fears Orcus. 2019 was kind of rough. Everyone is splashing Orcus into everything. But the game has come a long way since then, and I don't really see any reason for people to fear this card, especially when in order to play the Orcus engine you kind of need to play like 4 garnets, plus it takes up a couple of your extra slots. So realistically I don't see it seeing too much play, plus we have Bastilles running around, and as a dark card it's not a good place to be, so it can come off to 1, it'll be fine. Sprite Blue is kind of my choice for what will go from Sprite. I don't think Sprite is too hectic. It's kind of one of those decks that feels consistently good but never great. My problem with the deck right now is that it's being splashed into like every level 2 deck out there, and it kind of takes the uniqueness away from this deck, so they just start to feel like variants of Sprite. So this going to 1 kind of limits the consistency of that engine, and it kind of gives people into the mindset of thinking twice before they just splash Sprite into everything. So I think this will be a nice hit. Triple Tactic Talents I kind of put on here purely from a marketing perspective. Like, right now, this card does not exactly the same thing, but it has a very similar effect to Thrust, right? And a lot of people are using this to sort of combat this heavy hand trap saturated meta, right? The problem is though, again, more people are spending money on talents than they are on Thrust. And if I had to put myself into the mindset of Konami, which is a business, I would rather limit the thing that people are spending money on so that they are forced than buy the other, which is Thrust. So yeah, I don't think this would make it, but I could see it happening. Branded Fusion. I know a lot of people don't really take Branded seriously, mainly because the deck kind of has like a foot phobia, right? But it's something that survived for too long. And it can be kind of crazy when you're playing against him if you don't draw an Ash Blossom. So this is the card to hit, and the Alba's Law has finally come to an end. So what better time than to limit their best card than now? Small World is kind of like Triple Tactic Talents. It's something that I'm not entirely sure if it will make the list, but I can realistically see it happening, right? It's a very bad card. It has one of the worst costs in the game, and it's very hard to resolve. But because it's very hard to resolve, player base generally spends a lot of time on this card, which you're in games, right? A lot of times you might need to explain this to your opponent, or just you spend in a lot of time building your Small World bridge. And I don't think it's a good place to be. Like, if we can look at that Grastic Screener, right? One of the biggest reasons it got banned was because players used to spend like 5-10 minutes resolving the card. Small World isn't that bad. Like, people might spend like a minute or two at most resolving it, but for that reason it doesn't feel healthy for the game. Apart from that, the game's moving to the point where almost every deck has a one card starter, right? And this kind of helps you get that one card starter a lot more consistency. We already see it being played in like 4 big decks: Math Mech, Dragon Link, Fluandereeze, and even what's it called, Vanquish Soul. So I can see this going to one. It's like an indirect hit to those decks without really hitting those decks. Those decks don't really need to be hit, but I think, you know, an indirect hit would do wonders. Moving on to a more direct hit. I'm sick of Pearly. I'm sick of it. It's too good. This is going to win. I don't need to say more than that. I can see Bird of Sovereignty coming off the list. We kind of seen for a while now that Konami seems to be reintroducing the cards that they hit on Tri-Brigade. The deck seems a lot more balanced now, so this can come off. And I think the main reason it was on the list was because of Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds, right? With that ban, there's no reason for this to be on the list too. Like, at worst, what's going to happen? Your opponent's going to search an Apex Avian, which is 1 negate, and that's completely fine. Jasmine. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for this one because, I mean, there's only been like 3 or 4 good Rika players, but whenever this deck is like in the hands of a skill pilot, it's just crazy. And one of the biggest problems right now is that the deck doesn't really have an apparent choke point, and by putting Jasmine to 1, we kind of create that choke point. So I think it makes it a bit more fair, but it doesn't like completely kill the deck. If anything's going to get hit in that deck, I think it'll be Jasmine. Again, moving on to the side deck, I've put 2 cards which I would like to come off, but I'm not entirely sure that would. Masterpiece, I know a lot of people kind of fear this from 2017 format, but why? Like, it's basically a Tao's Trident. What's there to fear with this? Like, there's an entire deck dedicated to a Tao's Trident. It's like Evil Eye. That's all Evil Eye does, and it does not really doing anything in terms of the meta, so why can't we just take Masterpiece off as well? Colossus, I don't think this will come off. Not until it gets an errata. The biggest problem is that Thunder Dragons is not the problem. Thunder Dragons feels very mid. The problem is that the TCG player base is very creative, and they will splash it into everything they can. We see Droll and Lockboard being so impactful. Now imagine having a Droll and Lockboard but with legs. So yeah, we already saw when this was back. When was it playable? I think it was like 2019, 2020 when people were playing this, and it saw more play in like Chaos Dragon Link builds than it did in Thunder Dragon. So it needs an errata, and the errata kind of needs to be along the lines of, you know, if you summon this card, you can't summon Thunder. You can only summon Thunder with monsters for the turn. So yeah. On the semi-limited list, I've kind of just put 4 sort of generically good cards. Yeah, again, like the semi-limited list is like, you know, something that's very controversial. A lot of people don't like it, and they feel as though a card at 2 is just as good as it is at 3. But I feel as though it's just, you know, enough of a hit that, you know, people can think twice, or it just hurts the consistency. So I'm all for the semi-limited list. Pot of Prosperity is the first one. Kind of going back to Small World, the decks are becoming so consistent that you don't really want to give them more generic consistency tools, because it's in every game just sort of kind of feels the same. So my personal agreements with the game right now is that it's just, you know, so consistent, we kind of need, like, you know, some variance in gameplay. And one of the ways they can do that is by limiting these general consistency tools. Same thing with the adventure package. Like, they're not really doing anything right now, but this is more for preemptive hit in case, someone cracks the code and starts putting it into decks that, could really abuse this. Putting them at 2 doesn't really change them too much. It just sort of makes them a little bit more consistent, so people will think twice before, invest in the space in their decks. This is kind of a subtle hit to Cash Terra. I think, if they're not getting hit because of the ban list, there needs to be something subtle to kind of bring them back to balance, and putting Fenrir to 2 kind of does that without disrupting sales. Plus, it kind of, it's exactly that. It doesn't disrupt the sales because, a lot of people are going to pick this up for their side deck, and most people are playing 2 of this anyway, so might as well just hurt Cash Terra along the way. I think there'll only be 2 cards coming off the list, namely Orange Light and Pot of Desires. Orange Light again was kind of on the list because of the Sins of Drytron, but Drytron's not really doing anything right now, so might as well give people their Orange Light back, right? Same thing with Desires. I think it was the weirdest hit when this went to 1. It went to 1 for like absolutely no reason. And again, like whether it's at 2 or 3 makes no difference. It's just, a lot of people are, there's just a debate about the ratios that people should play. But right now it's not seeing too much play. So putting back to 3 kind of just gives those people who like to play the 3 sort of that, I don't know, guess that edge that they like. I just don't think this should have been in the list to begin with, and I think it should come off. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is there anything that you don't agree with? Is there anything I missed? Great to hear your thoughts over there. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't. Take care. Bye.